I think I can keep it within an hour minus a few minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, one moment.
I'll book about
Or on a cruise. A Disney cruise. She said it looks like your chin's falling out. Wait, what? Who put that?
He's good at it.
She said it looks like your chin's falling out. Oh. You're holding it. Yeah, I'm really bad at photos. Like, first I'm holding my chin, and you're like, hey!
It's down here, don't worry.
I know what it is.
This is 904.
I don't know. It's kind of weird to see the old smiling Mac now, because they changed it so much.
Yeah, I heard some of you are Mac fans, so we've got a little bit of that too here.
Maybe.
Mike, are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm all
Okay,
set. Thank
good.
you.
All
How's
set.
it, how's it, Mike? I don't hear it.
Mike, I think it's
Mike should be
fine.
good. I can.
Yeah,
again?
you're great.
Okay, perfect. Let's wait for this thing to start up here.
And that's
What?
what I'm thinking.
It's like I'm disconnected.
We're switching over
interesting.
to, check your connection on the cable.
I'll check the control panel.
You put it on resolution that I can't handle.
That's also possible.
Native is 1024 by 768.
Okay, let's just switch to mirroring and see if it likes that. Perfect.
Yay.
All right.
And so just before we start, I just wanted to remind new people that if you have to leave before 9 a.m. tomorrow, you're welcome to take your key and card and just slide it through the gate at the checkout RA desk there. You don't have to check out with somebody in person. And last year, Ian gave us a history of the Japanese version of the GSOS, and this year he's going to continue and share more of his research. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience while we hook everything up here. So I'm here today, as Andy said, to bring you some news from the Japanese-speaking side of Apple II related things. We don't yet have our own edition of JuiceJS, but we have a few other things that I'd like to show you today. So as some of you may remember from last year, there actually is some Japanese capability for the Apple IIGS that was developed by users in Japan who needed to, started out needing to display text that they downloaded from BBSs. And ended up developing into a complete tool set to display Japanese characters on the Apple IIGS. And last year, I demonstrated some problems with that software that are not something that the developers did wrong, but it simply is very difficult to patch the OS to fully support Japanese characters without making some extensive modifications. So what we have right now, and I will show you, we will just switch over here to our fake Apple IIGS. We'll go into Peach. All right, so I'm going to type some Japanese text.
What about my mother?
All right, so here's our Japanese text. Looks like something is missing here. There. All right, so we have some Japanese text, and it's on the screen. It looks rather nice. It's perfectly legible if you know Japanese. But if you start looking around, you'll notice that there are some problems. And the reason is that modern character sets, for example, in Unicode, characters can take a variable number of bytes. Japanese characters, I believe all of them in Unicode, UTF-8, take up 3 bytes, whereas your standard ASCII characters will take up 1, and it's backwards compatible with regular ASCII. Before Unicode became a standard, within the past 10 years or so, really, widespread on the internet, we had a few legacy character encodings, and the most commonly used one for Japanese was called Shift-JIS, in which you had the same single byte low ASCII values that you find on the Apple IIGS. And then the high ASCII bytes, well, some of them, were used to be the second byte of a Japanese character. And there are several banks of characters that are indicated by the high byte of the character value. And because of some idiosyncrasies with the Mac Roman character set on the Apple IIGS, the authors of the Japanese manager that I showed you all last year created a new character set called JMT, specifically for the Apple IIGS, that plays very nicely with it. So we have all of these characters. Each of them take up 2 bytes in memory. And because all of the 2GS tools assume that a character equals 1 byte, if I start backspacing over this, you'll notice that it's splitting the characters in half. And you'll see there's half of a character. That's not very good. So let's put it back. And let's copy and paste. So now we've got a bunch of this. And what happens if we resize the window? So sometimes you'll get lucky, but other times you'll get characters splitting up. It's not doing them now, but you'll see all these little glitches. And if you try to select a word, it doesn't really know what any of this is, so it just assumes that it's all one big word. So we've got the drawing down. Everything with that is pretty great. But once we have the Japanese text on the screen and we want to manipulate it, we have a few problems. So before I talk about what we did for that, I'll kind of show you how this all works. So the way that the Apple IIGS displays Japanese characters in this fashion is it recycles the high ASCII byte values for Japanese characters. So if I tried to type, what I'm doing right now is option 2 for the trademark symbol, it's just blank. You don't get anything. Because in this font, JM Gothic, those values are reserved for Japanese characters, and you don't get high ASCII. And I'm not quite so familiar with the internals of how other platforms like the Macintosh do it, but I am fairly certain that this is the way they handle it as well. And that's why if you look at your classic Mac, you'll see all these different language fonts. And when you switch keyboards, it will also switch the font to a font that it needs, because with these legacy character encodings, you just have to have different fonts for different languages because the byte values will overlap. So we have JM Gothic. We don't get high ASCII, but we get all the Japanese, and we can just switch to Shaston for our high ASCII Mac Roman characters, and they can all peacefully coexist. So what happens if we take our Japanese text string, and you'll probably see things get mangled a little bit because as I'm manipulating the text, things are falling off. There. So we'll take this, we'll copy it, we'll send it down, and we will turn it into Shaston. Here's what we get. So no, it's not. And you'll notice all of these high ASCII byte values. And if we go and take a look at their values, so, all right, we've got the section symbol here, and that's going to be A4. And that's a Japanese hiragana character. So this A4 with the end tilde corresponds to this. And this is really nice when you're debugging, because instead of having to go into the debugger and poke around in memory, you can just change the font and then read the ASCII values of the characters that you get and see what's happening. So there we are. And what we need is something that can say, OK, is the Japanese manager present and active? If not, don't do anything. Assuming that, is the current style a Japanese font. If not, just do the normal stuff. And if all of those conditions are met, then we need to start walking around in our string of text, looking for byte values and finding out whether or not we're in a Japanese character, which can get kind of tricky because we can click anywhere and end up in the middle of one. And we can't just assume that we're starting from the beginning of the text and say we've got A4 here, A4, A4, and so on until this value is C6. It's a kanji. It's a higher set of characters. So if we're just keyboarding around, it's a little bit easier because we can kind of assume that you're somewhere. But then when you click in the mouse, TextEdit is taking the coordinate on the screen and running through the line of characters to convert it to a text offset. And you can't really assume that you're ending up in front of or in the middle of or in the back of a Japanese character. So all of your code to look around and find out where it is needs to be aware of that. And it needs to move itself around and check the values and position itself in the proper place before it starts doing its thing. So now we're going to go over to the real machine because real hardware is great. And we'll just quit out of Gus. And leave that up for reference. And we should be able to just I want to thank Jeff for letting me borrow his second site for a second year in a row. Let's go ahead and see what we have here. I think I can just bring this here. Perfect. Okay, hopefully we're not having some second site issues. If not, then I can show you on the Mac, but
Here it comes.
yeah, it looks like it's not reading the accelerator or the CF. There it goes. That's doing something.
Okay. That's just standard second site noise. Don't worry about it.
Nothing to see here. Up here. Should have left it on. Oh. I don't think I turned it off. Oh, right. It's reading the CF.
You ever open up a recent? Still not syncing back. Okay.
All right.
Hey.
Thank you, Jeff.
602 D1.
Now we just need to wait for the machine to boot. All right, so this is my GS. This has all of my latest stuff on it. And we're going to go back into Teach. And you'll see also up here, these values are, this is JMT text that is being displayed in Shasta that's not supposed to be. That is an issue with my Finder that I demonstrated last year, the Japanese version only, that will need to be resolved somewhere in the toolbox, most likely. All right. So now we have this machine loaded with, oh, there it is. Okay, good. New tools, we have line edit version 3.5 and text edit version 1.6. And some other tools. So now we go back into Teach, and let's type some Japanese text. Okay, so here's our Japanese text string, and let's start going back over it. So you'll notice that every character is neatly spaced over, nothing gets split in half, and we can select with the keyboard. And we can select with the mouse. And we can also double click and get, these aren't words per se, but the because Japanese writing does not use spaces as a word separator, what Mac OS and other modern operating systems typically do is they will, if you double click, then you'll get all of the type of character that surrounds it. So right here, we're getting all of the kanji. Here we get all of the hiragana. And if we type some hiragana and some katakana, it will also distinguish between those as well. And we can have some Roman text over here, and that's also just fine. And we can put this text in Shaston. All good. And we can do it with the keyboard as well. And also because text edit had a thing, some of you who have done some text editing in GSOS might have noticed that if you look in line edit, which is also fixed up for this too, in line edit, open apple and an arrow will go to the beginning or the end of the line, and option will go through the words. Text edit was also, or no, text edit was the reverse. Open apple and arrows would do words, and option and arrows would go to the beginning and end of the line. I changed it to match text edit and also to match Mac OS because I figured they should be consistent with each other. So here's our text, and we can also wrap it. Everything wraps just fine. Nothing gets split in half. And we can also, if our current font is Shaston, we can do our high Roman values, and they will be recognized properly because it knows that it's not a Japanese font, and it knows that those high ASCII byte values are not Japanese characters. So that is the Japanese part of what we have in these new tools, and this solves a long-standing problem with Japanese text input on GSOS. And there are checks built into all of this so that if you do not have the Japanese manager installed, or if you have the Japanese manager installed, but you have it turned off in the CDEV, here we go. So you can turn off JM here, and it won't do this. Or it won't, if JM is inactive, then you're not even going to get any of these characters. You're just going to get the gibberish high ASCII characters that I showed you earlier. And all of this code will not activate because it checks first. And we also have something for the English speakers among you, just a token of goodwill to give you something too. Now, if we go back over to the emulated GS, and we're just going to leave the machine on this time. Oh, wait. This is the new one. We need the old one. All right, we're going to teach. Select us some words. All right, so if you type oops. The emulated 2GS thinks that I have an American keyboard because it has no idea what the Japanese keyboard on my laptop is, and I need to remember that it's different. Okay, so here we go. We'll have some stuff like this. So the way word selection in TextEdit and LineEdit as of versions 3.4 and 1.5 respectively work is they'll only break on spaces. So you can have all of this punctuation here, and I can be like this, and oh, right, we need to change our font to Shaston, don't we? There we go. I can say I'll have anything that's not a space will get included in your word. Sometimes that's not really very desirable because say I'm doing this or I want something in parentheses. You don't want all of that stuff in your word. And I looked at what the Mac OS does. We have here, and if we do this, Mac OS only selects the alphanumeric characters inside of your punctuation. Linux, Unix, I believe Windows, although I don't think I tested Windows. Generally, all do this. So probably, well, I don't know the reason why the developers of GSOS did it this way, but it is much simpler to only break on spaces. The routine that checks for a word break originally was very small and didn't have to do a whole lot, because all it does is check to see if the application has installed a hook for its own custom word break routine. And if that doesn't exist, then it basically looks for a space. And if it doesn't find a space, then it's not a word break. So I personally didn't really think that was the greatest. I thought maybe we could do a little bit better. So let's go back to the real machine. Should have like a VGA switch or something up here. They make those, right? Maybe next year.
Not right now.
All right. If we go to the real 2GS, oh, okay. Well, you can still see it. Let's just. The second site is doing its very best, and I'm grateful to it. Let's make sure our font is Shaston. Try to remember where all the characters are on this US keyboard. Oh, there. All Shaston. Shaston. Oh, Shaston looks different on the second site, but okay. So here we have the same behavior that the Mac demonstrates, where your punctuation is not included in your word. And if you notice, we will also have, where are they? Oops. I think I broke the, yeah. Let's go back. Hopefully the second site won't act up again. There we go. All right. Considering the strange font and on-screen behavior, I think we have a couple of minor second site issues, but we should be able to pull through. And if not, I'll show you on the Mac. Back to teach. That's better. All right, so we've got some Roman text, if I can type it correctly. And still Shaston. All right, so we have, what about words with apostrophes? This word, we would want it to be different in different contexts. So this is a word. These are not part of the word. So what needs to happen is when you have an apostrophe, and also we can do, how do I type these again? That's not the right one. There. Smart quotes in high ASCII. We also there. Oh, not the right one. There. All right. Oh, this is an old version. The right version will actually not include these. Actually include these in the word. So what happens is when it finds an apostrophe or a quotation mark, it checks to see what's around it. And if it finds letters and numbers around the apostrophe, then it will consider it to be part of a word because it knows that it's a contraction. If it finds a space or some other non-alphanumeric character around it, then it considers it to be a word break. So contractions work and quotes work, and we don't have to worry about having, say, this be considered a word. So there's something for the English speakers as well. And like I said, we've also got smart quotes. That works too. So that's what I've been doing for the past few months, trying to make the toolbox a little bit better. You have a question?
The apostrophe, excuse me, the apostrophe exception, is that
Yes.
Any, I guess, hybrid character as well, or is it specifically a case for apostrophes?
Oh, only for apostrophes.
Okay, because there are places where you'll have a word that's got a dash in the middle, and you double click on it, you select only the part before or after the dash.
Right. And it's, I can't begin. Let's reboot.
And
Oh,
that behavior is not consistent between two applications on the Mac, let alone throughout
Right.
various operating systems. So,
well,
or when you're programming, you've got variables with dots in the middle and things like that. So I was just wondering if you had it specifically because the apostrophe in English, or if it was anything that matches that pattern.
right. The way that GSOS works, and probably at least Mac OS, is that it has in the toolbox a standard routine for finding word breaks, and it also has a standard routine for finding word wraps for when you resize the window. And then it also has the availability of a hook. So you can install, as an application developer, you can install a hook for a word break or a word wrap and override the system routine. Say you have a word processor or a text editor designed for programming, and you want to, say, disable all word wrapping because you've got an editor that's designed for developers and you don't want comments to wrap over to the next line if you're working in a small window. Your program can install a hook, and this is all documented and officially supported by the design of the system. And then you can override that. But the default will do it this way. And I'll show you what happens when we And like I said, it looks like the build on this machine is a few days old. And there are a couple of things that it doesn't do, but the actual version does all this stuff. So we have, say, this. And hyphens inside of an alphanumeric are considered to be one word. I believe we've got this is the old version, so it will probably not do this. Correct. The latest version also does this for slashes. But say we have another character inside, like this. This is a word break, a comma, or say a period. So it depends on the character. What I've done is I've just gone through the Mac Roman character table and looked at all of the punctuation characters and said, well, one thing I did was I went on my Mac and I poked around with it and I said, what does the Mac do? And I mostly used that as a reference to be consistent with other Apple software. I can't recall any specific situations where I decided that the way the Mac did it should be done differently. So I basically used the Mac OS as a guide for saying which non-alphanumeric characters should be considered not a word break when surrounded by alphanumeric characters. But as an application developer, you can override that.
Yeah, but if you were going to do a patch for, say, a programming or a development tool, you could patch it to where a dot in the middle of a character could be considered the same instead of a word break, that kind of thing. If you
Yes.
were to do that, if you were developing a language,
Right.
you
Well,
could have that as a regular separator.
right. And I'll give you one example of where you would want to do that. Say you're making a terminal emulator. And
IP numbers.
right, say it's a telnet client, and you'll be typing stuff like, and you'll want this to be an entire word probably because it's a file path. Or say, all right, so a period is not a word break when surrounded by alphanumerics. So that's it. But anything in that context, because if you look at a modern machine too, like say you have a Linux workstation, and you start double-clicking around in the terminal emulator, and you start double-clicking around in your web browser or a text editor, you'll notice that the way that word breaks are handled when you double-click is typically very different because the terminal emulator, and I don't know the actual API level specifics of everything because I haven't looked at the low level of how say, the libraries that do text on a Linux terminal emulator work, but they have their own code that's breaking words in a way that's more suitable for a terminal emulator. So Apple did think of this when they wrote GSOS, and that's something that is fully supported. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
I do, and if you need to take this offline, this is cool, but I didn't see your talk last year. What was the main motivation behind the project in the beginning?
Sure.
Because I suspect that you're saying that the GS was never really
Right.
initially support Japanese. So
That's
you're
correct.
Building that into it.
So I'll share with you some of the background. We still have plenty of time. The background that I shared last year, Apple added Japanese support to the Mac in 1986 with the introduction of the Mac Plus. And that Japanese support has historically been very good, and Apple has put a lot of effort into it. They never did anything at all for the GS. The GS was sold in Japan. It wasn't cheap. It was sold through Canon, I believe. And a few people did buy them, and they got together on an online service called NiftyServe and formed a group called FApple. And they started poking around, and the beginning was just a couple of individual standalone applications that would display Japanese text, because what they would do is they would get on BBSs that people using domestic brand computers that had Japanese support were posting things like recipes and other text documents on, and they would download these documents and they would want to be able to view them on their Apple IIGS. So they wrote programs for that, and that was the very beginning. And eventually things expanded to where they had a whole tool set where you could actually develop applications that supported Japanese and have the whole OS support it, and not just have your Japanese application to interface with the rest of the world. So it grew out of that, and it, I believe it was 1987 or 88 when the people who developed this first got their Apple IIGSs. And the last version of the Japanese manager was released in 1993. The latest version, I should say. And it's all free to distribute, source code and everything. So might be looking at that. One thing that I would like to see, by the way, for the Japanese manager is that. This is our control space device. Issues with the keyboard. So I'm going to switch back over to the Mac here since we're pretty much done with this. Shut down the real machine. I don't need to save that. So really the issue is that basically the whole machine was in a foreign language, and the motivation was to fix that. And that's how things got started, if that answers your question.
It does.
It does provide some background.
But obviously it's been improved since that initial.
Yes. What happens is the Japanese manager patches the standard text vector in QuickDraw, so that when there's a Japanese font, it will insert its drawing methods, and it has its own Japanese font format that contains these character bitmaps, and it will draw them on the screen. But that just handles, like I said, putting them on the screen. And once they're on the screen, you need to deal with text edit and line edit in order to get the text manipulation to work properly. And that is what I have done in recent months and just demonstrated today. So there are all these different areas in the OS where things need to happen for Japanese support, and the process is beginning to expand the territory of that. Any other questions or comments?
Is F Apple a slur?
It's the F stands for forum. It's the Apple II NGS forum. So if any of you want the tools, I'm up in room 133. You can come see me. And I can pass them off to you. Or if you have any other questions or comments, or you just want to chat about the project, you're most welcome to. Thank you, everybody.
Where are those trees?
Oh, I found it online. I just wanted a desktop background in these particular colors and shrunk it down to 800 by 600 because I actually crashed Photoshop on this machine because I was shrinking the desktop background down and it ran out of memory. But the machine has since had more memory added to it.
Thanks, Ian. The next session is new product announcements, and that's coming at 2:45. I know since we ended a little earlier, Javier had provided us a link to a Unidisc video. Is Javier here? You just got back? If I can find the link, maybe I could put that up. It's probably only 5 or 10 minutes or so, but that might.
I was posted on the Facebook a
Couple weeks ago.
It's hard to find things.
Yeah.
From a few days ago.
So maybe I'll put that up, but feel free to also take a stretch break.
What's the video about?
It's about the Unidisc something or other. I haven't looked at it yet.
Let me get this.
Well, it's using the Unidisc chip as a process for video.
Okay.
He actually did that in his demo yesterday.
Did he do that? Okay. I'll bring it up. Stuff out of your way here. Oh, take your time.
to announce my CrossFit training session for the next year's KFest.
Out on the quad.
How to hit.
I can sell some of this kit. I don't want to program it.
No.
Yeah, but you have to install the drivers, you have to install, yeah, the whole thing. People don't want that.
So, Andy, what are we doing here?
Well,
As the director, what's our motivation? So are you gonna be like, hey, there was a product announcement, here's the guy?
no,
Like, are
I'm
you-
gonna, it's an open mic for product announcements.
Okay.
Oh, it's open.
So
Open
anybody,
mic night, that always ends in just happiness. All right, so I'm just gonna leave it running for a bit.
oh, 2:45, I am early.
Yeah, you're early.
Tomorrow.
I'm off by 15 minutes.
Please hum some okay.
So we have more
So
time.
I will put one more quick thing up that will not offend.
Oh, we got time to stack up chairs and make sure.
You do have to do that.
What's that?
We are gonna have to do that.
Says, if you can't read this, you have been here for too long.
I don't even know how that works
Zoom to-
anymore.
I
I am the
If
only,
you can't read
I am
this,
the
you
only
have been
person
here
at the archive who doesn't use a Mac. Everybody else uses a Mac
They all use them.
or has a thing.
This was just some kind of-
That was,
Oh, you can take it,
Okay, go.
you people.
Heck no, G.
Getting that? Action.
2. And it was pretty amazing. It had a full vector display and these little overlay cards you'd stick on the screen. And I love the fact they never released Pac-Man, just a clone of Pac-Man called Clean Sweep, even though the artwork on the front of the Vectrex is pretty Pac-Man inspired. Let's fire it up and have a look. There it is. It's getting a bit old, probably needs recapping. You can hear it humming away. And this is a flash cart, which means I can assemble my own stuff to it. And if you look at number 1 there, that's Citrix. Now, while that is kind of cool, this isn't exactly what I was expecting. Let me show you what I was expecting and compare the two. Well, a few things are right. First of all, the tempo was correct. The tuning was out, and if you listen to the sound, it has this bass, has this real chorusy sort of effect to it that sounds really nice. And that's what's missing. It's the ability to get those really cool chorusy style effects. Which are really cool, powerful sounds, you know, and you've got some of these sounds can be incredibly powerful to use. Square waves and little arps. I've got little noise hits, noise runs. And the idea is I take these series of tests and I play them on the actual Vectrex and I see what I can and can't achieve. So for instance, this one here, it's actually using this hardware-based drop-off. And this is what I want to test in particular to see if this works when I plug it in a real cartridge into the Vectrex. And that brings us to the problem of testing on the actual Vectrex. There's a little bit of conversion and compiling and assembler and things that goes on. But the main thing that's quite frustrating is the cartridge. You actually have to take apart and put a little SD card in it. You have to run this utility that rebuilds all the menus first and then, you know, put the cartridge back together with the card in it and then usually plug it in and out of the side of the Vectrex a few times to get it working. And sometimes you get lucky and other times it goes pretty crazy. So we'll see what happens. So that's just booting at the moment. Vec Multi, yeah, that's the name of the cartridge. Citrix AY Debug, that's number 1. Let's run. Whoa! And that is not a good sign. Nah, that's the built-in game that comes with it. Ah, dear. Dun, dun, dun. It's the intro screen.
Vectrex early vector music experiments. He's a chip musician who knows his stuff, so he walks you through every single thing he's doing.
Very nice. Okay. This session is a little bit of an open mic, and anybody who wants to present any new product announcements is invited to come up. First, we're going to let Jeff Weiss go. Does anybody have something they might want to come up and mention? So Chris is going to, I know Charles had something he's going to say. You can always come up after those two. So we got 3 people. handing out. Do you want to do that now?
Sure. Just like, if there are any other Hackfest victories that the judges haven't seen, get in touch with us ASAP after the session. Okay?
Money helps.
How's that?
Money helps. Maybe. I can't keep all. I can hurt, but I can keep all.
Do you need sound?
No.
It's almost there.
Or live?
Thank you. All right. Let's get video on.
I like this chair.
Yes.
It's very comfortable. All right, they're good. Arms are good.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
My name is Jeff Weiss, and I would like to announce for KFest a updated release to Mega Memory Tester 2.1. We have a small number of updates for this release. The first one, which is probably the most important one, is whenever a bad memory test is detected. Before, there was no telling what value was being read and what the value was expected, so you didn't know which bit, for example, was bad. So now the program will display the read value, the expected value. Everything is still in 16-bit words, but at least you get a better idea of where the problem is, instead of just a general address is now which bit in the address as well. Also, upon request, all previous versions had read bits from the low bit to high bit in sequential order on a test. Now every iteration will not only do low bit to high bit, but also a high bit down to low bit, also as an extra sanity check. This also means that the program will run a little bit slower, but also does an extra check along the way as a safety feature. Thanks. So what I'm going to do is show it running. Of course, on an emulator, all the memory is going to be good, but at least you can see what it will look like.
Yeah, you hope.
Oh, you hope, yeah. Well, hey, if nothing else, you can test the memory on your host computer, right? So here's the new Mega Memory Tester. You can see that it's version 2.1. It's already on the website. You can download anytime you want. So it looks just like the way it did before. The UX is exactly the same, the user interface. The controls work just like the CDAs on a 2GS. You can change the iteration. You can change when the start bank. You can change the last bank. And you can quit right away. So if you just start it, you can't really tell, but it is running just a little bit slower than before. And once it completes, it'll definitely say that well, hopefully my laptop is running okay, and when it will complete, it will say that memory will be okay. The first phase, well, it does check a bunch of bit patterns, and this is what it's running now, the bit test. As soon as it goes through all the banks of the bit test, it will then write a pattern across memory, and then from start to end bank, and then it will verify that that pattern has remained the same. If the iteration was set to infinity, that pattern does adjust upon every iteration. So if you have weird problems and you aren't certain if you can confirm it's memory or not, and you run an iteration and it shows okay, run it through all 256, run it through for at least 256 iterations, then you know that pattern has run through its entire core sequence. And if it passes 256, then unless you have a really, really intermittent problem, it's probably okay. So I'm glad that my laptop has good memory.
Yay.
Any questions? Yes.
Is this, what hardware memory expansions is this compatible with? Are there any hardware memory expansions that's not compatible?
The question was, for expansion memory, what's compatible, what's not compatible? As long as the 2GS can identify there's memory on the expansion card, the Mega Memory Tester does use the toolbox calls to determine how much memory. So as long as the 2GS can identify memory on the card, Mega Memory Tester will only test what the toolbox tells it. So if you know that the card's supposed to have, say, 8 gigs and the toolbox only says it's 6 gigs, then Mega Memory Tester won't try to even find any additional memory. Good question. Yes? If you're using an emulator, you can have up to 14. Yeah, 14. Yeah, it does require patching the toolbox. You'll find all emulators, all modern emulators do that. ActiveGS, KEGS, G-Sport, Sweet 16. I'm not sure if I'm forgetting any others. So yeah, that's just a 1-byte toolbox patch. I think it was first developed by Bernie to the Rescue, and then it showed up in everybody else after that. Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Chris, would you like to come up?
Yay, Chris.
Yay.
Yay, you.
Get that thing in there. All right.
It's still off at the moment.
Ooh, is it on? Everybody hear me? Yeah, great. All right, so this is less a sales pitch and more a pitch to you guys. So here's my Assembly Lines, a complete book that I did with Roger Wagner. I was editor. He's obviously the author. I will have copies of this for sale in about an hour. But what I thought I'd do is I got a lot of questions this week about like, well, geez, you self-published that. That must have been like a ton of work. And how much money did you have to put up front and, you know, et cetera. And so I thought I would just give a quick outline. What do you do if you want to self-publish your own book? Okay, so there's only 6 steps. First one is the most important. You have to have an idea, obviously. Second step, contact famous developer, unless you are a famous developer, in which case you're done with that one. Third step, download your favorite authoring tool. I used OpenOffice. Pretty much anything will work. That it depends on your level of comfortableness, I guess, with the software. You can use Microsoft Word if you really wanted to. But something, if you're going to do a book and you want it to look like a real book, you want to have something that can do like indexes, table of contents, page numbers, things like that. And so, you know, Microsoft Word isn't really going to cut it if you want it to look professional. If you have money, you could do, you know, Adobe. That's obviously the best, but I didn't want to pay for that. So I went with OpenOffice, and I can tell you my kind of trials with using that if you want to do that. Yeah, you have to type in a lot of assembly code if you're going to do this particular project, but it may depend on your project. And then the next step is basically to do the self-publishing. I used Lulu for mine. There's a lot of self-publishing websites. They're all more or less comparable, so I'm not necessarily a big fanboy or something of Lulu. But the general idea is they will do everything for you. There's no money up front. So it's really, you know, you do the work of putting together a PDF. You put it onto their website. And in fact, with Lulu, they'll even do things like design the cover for you if you're not comfortable doing that. I wanted to have total control, so I designed the whole cover myself and then just uploaded a PDF. But it'll walk you through it if you just want to upload like an image, and it'll even, you know, you can put in the title and it'll do all nice title graphics and stuff for you. And they'll give you an ISBN number typically, so that's the number that's on the back of the book, so you don't have to worry about getting that yourself. And then there's just a button that says, yes, I want to make this available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere. And so once you've done all that, it takes, on Lulu, if you do that, like within a couple of days, your book is up and live. Amazon takes about a month before it actually shows up on their website. And when you do it, what you do is you say, basically, they're going to take a cut of whatever sales are. So for example, for my assembly lines book, the minimum price I could charge was something like $21.74. That was the minimum. And then Lulu was going to take $20 out of that $21.
Whoa.
Yes. So, which sounds horrible, but typically for a hardcover book, I could have been charging something like, $29.95 or $35 or something like that. So you can basically set the price to be whatever you want, depending on how much profit you want to make. With assembly lines, I made the deal with Roger Wagner. I was not in this to make any money on it. I wish I could have actually said it, so I really wasn't making any money, but Lulu wouldn't let me go down to the exact bare minimum. The horrible thing is Amazon can charge whatever the heck they want. So even though I was charging $21 on Lulu, Amazon originally was charging $39 and keeping all of it. So I got nothing from them. And when I complained from them, I said, hey, the price, I found the price cheaper somewhere else. You can't complain as the author. You're just complaining as like a customer. And they said, oh, okay, we'll lower the price. And so they lowered it to like 35. Right. Okay, good. Of which, I get nothing. So it's kind of, you're not really going to make a lot of money doing something like this. So if you're hoping to get rich, it's not going to happen. But I guess what my real point is, it's very easy to self-publish a book. And if you have an idea, let's say you want to do a history of, the Cocoa computer or something like that, although it sounds like there already is one. How about a history of what else? Give me something else.
Retro writing.
What was that?
Retro writing.
Retro writing. Oh, it's beautiful. The history of retro writing, yeah. No, if you have an idea, something that you're really passionate about, just go for it. It's not hard to do. Get it out there. The cool thing is, because there's no expense for you up front, if you sell one copy and it's to your grandmother, that's fine, right? It doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt you. Obviously, it takes a lot of time and effort. But I would encourage you, if you have an idea, get it out there and the community can just buy it. Any questions right now? I'll be available for questions also just later on. But
so if you would set your price with Lulu a little higher than Amazon price more, would you then have money?
Yes, that's a really good point. So if you actually, basically the amount of money that you make with Lulu is the same amount that you would make with Amazon. So if I had charged, say, $30 for the book, so I was making like $10 on each copy, then Amazon probably would have ended up charging, what, $45 or something like that? No, you would get the $10 then. So basically, whatever you set above the base minimum price is what you're going to make from Lulu, from Amazon, from Barnes & Noble. Yeah. Good question.
Are you auctioning off any signed copies?
I didn't pay you to do that. As a matter of fact, I am. I have three books that I'm auctioning off, and the proceeds for this are going to go to the Ryan Sunaga Scholarship Fund. So there's 2 copies of the new book that are both signed by Roger Wagner, and I'm happy to sign them too if you want. And then there's a 3rd book, which is an unopened copy of the original Assembly Lines book with 1984 error in it. Okay. And I'll have those auction sheets at the table later on when we do the swap meet. Thanks for reminding me. What else? Any other questions? All right. Well, feel free to stop by and talk to me about self-publishing. Thanks.
Next up is Charles. Charles.
You guys are sick of me yet? Right. So I've just got one real quick little thing. It literally is a very little thing. I can say it's my. I can say this is my one more thing from yesterday, mostly because I totally forgot that I had this with me. And I've got one, and some lucky beta tester can have it for the low price of. I think I decided $8 for this, but it is a. I don't even know if I need this, but the gist of it is, you take the speaker out of the logic board of your Apple II, plug this in, plug the speaker back into this, and it gives you a headphone jack. Plug in a speaker or a pair of headphones, and the sound comes out of the speaker.
unplug it, and it comes out of the original speaker. So it's got a little switching headphone jack inside it, and it just goes right onto the logic board to sit basically inside the case. So you'll have to take cable and run it out the back, or if you're in a destructive mood, you can drill a hole in the side of the case and do a panel mount or something like that. But that would be on you.
Will it fit? No.
Hmm?
I was going to ask if it fit in the 2C.
You don't need it for the 2C. 2C has a
Sorry.
headphone jack.
If you run a cable from this to the outside
Mhm.
and the cable has a plug on the end,
Mhm.
can it still tell whether you've got headphones plugged in?
No, because the switch is actually inside here. Yeah.
So you still have to reach inside the case to plug in the headphones.
Sorry, what was that in the back? Yeah. So the if you want to be able to take it in and out and decide whether it's you have to take it in and out of this. This is where the switch is. So, like I said, I've got one available now. It'll be available on my website probably when I get home, or you can go ahead and reserve one now, and I'll take your name down. In the back.
Will it work with the 2C plus?
You don't need it for the 2C plus.
Yeah, you do.
It doesn't have it doesn't have a headphone jack.
It's a 2C plus minus.
Oh. Bring me a 2C plus, and I'll take a look. It goes vertically on the board, so I don't know if it has enough space. But I don't have a 2C plus to test it with. I thought it had a headphone jack. Sorry.
What is your website?
Retroconnector.com. And this isn't on there yet, but it will be, like I said, when I get home from KansasFest. But see me during the vendor fair, and I'll take your name down, and you can pre-order it. Thank you. Oh, and if you loaned me a serial cable the other day, these aren't yours. They're probably right here. And if you don't claim them, I'll take them home with me. Yay!
Next up is Ivan. Ivan.
In a world where Ivan exists.
I'm not sure it's on.
Hello. I guess it isn't. I'll just speak loudly. I just have a couple of quick software updates to announce. If you're on the Facebook or ComSys Apple II, you probably know about them already. Well, one of them you do. One update is actually 21 years after the release of the original of my utility Unfork It. For those of you who use ProDOS 8 on an Apple IIe card and a Mac LC, you frequently discover the problem of you copied something over from the Mac side to a ProDOS disk, and then when you try to access it in ProDOS, you discover you can't because that file has been copied as what's called in ProDOS an extended file, which is to say that it's a wrapper around one or two forks, which are themselves files. ProDOS 8 has no idea what to do with an extended file. It's something only understood by GSOS and macOS when it's accessing a ProDOS disk. So I originally released Unfork It in 1994. Sadly, it had a very, very awful bug that I live in shame for. That bug has been fixed. There's been a couple of other enhancements added to it. I think also looking at the old threads, you, Michael, identified a bug where you said that the free space bitmap was not correctly reallocated for what was used by the resource index block. I was unable to reproduce that bug. If you see it again, you know, I'll be happy to look more closely at it. So so in addition to people who use a Mac LC card, potentially if you've got a GSOS disk image or a GSOS disk, and like you've got a teach file, that's a forked file in GSOS. You can't read it in macOS, but you could now with Unfork It, go ahead and unfork it, and then it just becomes an ordinary ProDOS 8 file, and you can view it with your favorite text editor. So it's never too late for an update to Unfork It, is evidently. There's also one other minor feature I spontaneously added while here at KansasFest to A2 Server. If you, at the Linux prompt, you use the A2 Server setup program to install GSOS to your network shared volume, it now also offers to install communication software specifically ProTerm, Z-Link, and Spectrum. So that way, if you do have also a serial card or a serial cable connected to your Raspberry Pi, you can immediately actually start using it to go on and get other software and whatnot. So if you want or need that, all you have to do is type A2 server setup while logged into your Raspberry Pi, and it will just ask you if you want to install that. So little updates. Enjoy.
Yay.
Do we have any other product updates, announcements? Okay. Oh, there we go. Mark?
Quinn's amazing. Hello, my name is Mark. Quinn's amazing Wii GUI toolkit now supports progress bars. You can say &prog and give it a view ID and coordinates and a width. And then you can say &set v and set the value from 0 to the width. And you can have progress bars in your Wii GUI application, which I'm going to make one when I get home. But yes, what? Seriously, there's a question about that? All right, go ahead.
How easy would it be to turn that into a clickable slider?
Patches welcome. That's the open source way of saying fuck you. Easier now that we've added one, because Quinn sort of has a sense now of like what it takes to add a new control. And there may be some code cleanup refactoring coming to make it easier to do the next one. As for the slider itself, what? Okay, anyway, there may be some patches, but I would be happy to discuss it with you, or Quinn, or all three of us. That's all.
Anybody else? Any announcements? Okay, so the way the next phase works is 3:30, this room's going to be turned into a place where you can come and bring your stuff to sell. You can set up your machines if you just want to show people things you've been working on. So we're going to need a little bit of time to transform this room, push tables to the edges and all. We also have Hackfest judging that's, I believe, still ongoing. Is that right?
We're done unless somebody comes to us. You gotta look at Forrest.
So Forrest. And then at 4:30, make sure you're back down here also, because the Hackfest judging results will be announced and we'll get to hear about each project. So we have a little bit of time. I guess we need most people to kind of clear out of the room so we can get it ready, but come back down by 3:30.
Yeah. And the stream is going to go.
Stream is up.
Good night, folks.
Good night.